All right, welcome to talkSPORT USA, our dedicated American sports YouTube channel, focusing on the NFL, on talkSPORT's NFL show here this week, but so much great content from the NBA, from golf, from we'll be doing MLB and everything else on there as well. I'm Gavin, delighted to say Brian T. Smith alongside me, one of the main men at .com, who knows to have his finger on the pulse. Brian, how are you doing, brother?
Cheerio, mate, cheerio.
I actually brought in today, and I forgot to bring them in. My wife just got back from America. I've got some milk duds. I've got some goldfish.
Milk duds are amazing.
If you're feeling a bit...
There's a billion things to get into, as always on this show. Well, it's so good to be back with you. One of my favorite things about being in London for 2+ years now is that nobody really says cheerio. Like, you hear that a lot in America. And I wrote a farewell column 2+ years ago at the Houston Chronicle, and I think that was in the headline and ended with that. Nobody says, like, if you say cheerio over here, you're going to get the worst look, like, yeah. Mate, what? Oh, no. You know,
worst look might be the nicest thing that happens. Someone is going to
curse you out on the Tube platform if you say cheerio in the morning.
Right, let's get into it. So on today's show, we're going to talk about rookie quarterbacks, particularly Shedeur Sanders and Jaxson Dart, when they should be starting. Big news coming overnight about this Trey Hendrickson deals, the Terry McLaurin deals. So we're going to get into those, but we're going to get into those on the frame of they got the deal done. What on earth is taking Micah Parsons and the Cowboys so long? And is this a terrible way to run a franchise? That's all coming up on the show. But let's start off with the Browns quarterback situation.
The conspiracy of conspiracies, Will.
Kenny Pickett gets traded overnight to the Las Vegas Raiders, which means he's been traded from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia to Cleveland to Las Vegas over the last few years. Like... He's getting to a point where the value of the picks that he's taken are kind of slowly turning back into another first rounder. So
and he's a Super Bowl winner. Like, that's my favorite thing about. Like, we were in New Orleans last year at the Superdome, covering the Eagles, covered the Chiefs. Kenny, you had Carson Wentz out there. Kenny Pickett wins a Super Bowl, and now he's just bouncing around all the NFL. And I guess somewhere out there, Terry Bradshaw is still convinced that the Steelers got it wrong with Kenny Pickett because they didn't surround him enough. If Kenny Pickett was good enough to be starting, he would be starting in the NFL. That's how it goes.
And on that very point, so Joe Flacco is the nominative starter in Cleveland. They have the two rookies sat there, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Gabriel was kind of named the backup during, or in that way of when we see training camp and we see snap counts and we see everything else, it appeared like he was going to be the key backup. When we've seen his work in preseason, not been great. Joe Flacco, we've seen very, very little of. Shedeur Sanders, we've seen a lot of. 3 quarters in a game here, 2 quarters in a game there. And it's beginning to start to get some momentum, both amongst the Browns fan base and wider, that Shedeur Sanders, if he's going to get that many snaps, surely he needs to be taking practice reps with the ones, and surely he should be higher up this quarterback depth chart.
But should he? I mean, I don't think he should be right now. And I love it. We're at the point in our general discussion, our NFL discussion, the way that we talk as human beings on social media, that everything has to be a conspiracy anymore. It's absolutely absurd. Number one, let's roll the stats. Dylan Gabriel had significantly better stats than Shedeur Sanders during the preseason. Number two, most importantly, everything comes down to, Will, initially where you are drafted. Now, your favorite quarterback of all time, according to you, the greatest quarterback of all time, Brock Purdy, is the ultimate Mount Rushmore proof that it doesn't matter where you're drafted. And I fully agree with that overall long term. But Brock Purdy didn't come in and in training camp, he all of a sudden became the backup and he was the anointed one. That happened through injuries. If Shedeur Sanders becomes the starter eventually for Cleveland, because of 2 things, Will, because he's really good, and because it ended up working out in his favor. They drafted Dylan Gabriel higher. They drafted him 3 rounds before. Of course, Dylan Gabriel is going to get more of an edge. And this whole idea that comes out from, bleeping people on social media, influencers, people who are just trying to brand themselves and say as much as possible that Shedeur Sanders should be working out with the ones all the time. When did that become that's never been a thing in the NFL. I covered training camp after training camp. The top QB works out with the ones, the backup works out with the 2s, and your 5th rounder probably works out with the 3s. Shedeur Sanders, this is the main thing, hasn't faced anything any different than anybody else has who's a 5th round pick. He is a 5th round pick, Will. So if he is good enough, he will be a starter. If the Browns didn't want him, they wouldn't have drafted him. If the NFL didn't really want him, he wouldn't have been drafted. He would have been blackballed. I saw what Eric Dickerson said. Show me some proof, man. Eric Dickerson, by the way, not the bastion of authenticity in terms of a Corvette comes to mind, right, at SMU. So this whole idea that Shedeur Sanders is being held back by the NFL and held back by the Cleveland Browns. If I look at the numbers, one stat stands out. 7 sacks. 7 sacks in the preseason. Some of that's on his line, and some of that's you're playing with threes. A lot of that is on a 5th-round pick who's trying to do too much and running all over the field. It doesn't cut it in the NFL.
But people love to make excuses. People love to say it's because he's playing with the threes. It's because he's played more snaps. It's because of the line. But the fact is you're also playing against the 2s and 3s when you're playing with the 3s. You're not facing.
I dealt with this every year in the
preseason
preseason with the Houston Texans, right? So if the fans had their favorite quarterback at the time and they were in quarterback hell, so it was really hard, and I get it. But if they had their chosen backup, it was Tom Savage at one point, they would always flip the conversation to fit them. He's only playing with the 2s and 3s. Well, he's going against the 2s and 3s. That's how it goes in the NFL. They protected Joe Flacco during the preseason. Dylan Gabriel threw the most attempts. Shedeur Sanders had one good game against a bunch of 2s and 3s, and his last preseason game was absolutely horrible. No wonder he's number 3 on the depth chart, Will.
I think there's a twofold conversation here, right? The Shedeur Sanders of it all is that Shedeur Sanders isn't a 5th-round quarterback. Shedeur Sanders, for every talent evaluator, every scout out there who's spoken out on this, everybody had him as a first-rounder in a weak quarterback draft. And maybe if he'd come out last year with a very strong quarterback draft, he would have been a 2nd-rounder. There's no way he slips to the 5th unless there's all the nonsense and noise around him. There's the Deion Sanders of it. There's the apparently that he went into interviews being very cocky, basically being like, what can you do for me rather than what can I do for you?
Like, you have to sell me on your team for me to go there, which is what you do in high school and college when you're on a recruiting tour.
Like, there is that element of it, and there is the cult of personality that comes with it, and there's the fact that that's going to draw way more eyeballs.
And a lot of baggage, Will. A lot of baggage.
It's really fascinating that, and I'm sorry to do this, but you brought up the Brock Purdy situation, and what that says to me is it's about a kind of organizational structure and the Browns is a complete mess. Because the story we hear from Jed York, the owner of the 49ers, is that he turns up for the first day of training camp and he has a meeting with Kyle Shanahan where, with Jimmy Garoppolo sat there as a guy who's taken them to a Super Bowl, with Trey Lance, a guy they spent 3 first-round picks on, he sits there and says to Jed York, I think the 3rd-string quarterback might be our best quarterback. On day 1 of training camp, the coach recognised it, the GM recognised it, and yes, he came in because of injury, but within the organisation, if Brock Purdy hadn't started during that playoff run, he'd have been starting week 1 the next season. I believe that. From a Browns perspective, we have no idea if the owner is the one that actually was drafted.
Jimmy Haslam will tell you he didn't want to draft him.
Who was behind the Dylan Gabriel pick, which made no sense where he was picked. He's an undersized guy who, maybe has performed a bit better than Shedeur, but doesn't have the traits to be a long-term starter in the NFL, I believe. And it is just the constant clown show that the Cleveland Browns have been for years and years and years now.
Deshaun Watson come back at any point with this $230 million contract. The biggest irony for Shedeur Sanders for me, and I have nothing against like the Shedeur supporters, the fanboys, the fangirls, whatever. Fine, like that's who you want to base your life around. That's fine. People are into K-pop, and people are like whatever, man. Like whatever you're into,
K-pop
that's
Demon
cool.
Hunters is a banger,
but. He went to the worst organization for him, and the fact that he fell to the 5th round and went to an organization that already had Deshaun Watson, that went all into Deshaun Watson when nobody else wanted to do that, and everyone else in the world would have told you stay 100 feet away from him, like on the sidewalk. If Deshaun Watson's on this sidewalk, you go to the other sidewalk. They draft Dylan Gabriel early. You still have Joe Flacco. Most teams in the NFL wouldn't have Joe Flacco as their starter. In Cleveland, he is the anointed starter. I talked to Tony Grossi, longtime Browns reporter for talkSPORT, exclusive interview. In Cleveland, because Joe Flacco had 4 good games, they treat him like he is the god of Cleveland football. So you have all these problems, all this drama, all the back history. That is the worst team and the worst fan base he can go to. And they want a savior, but he's going to have to prove it, Will. And he did not prove it in the preseason. His last preseason game was freaking horrible. He's lucky he didn't get cut.
I'm not gonna go preseason game horrible. I'm going to make a judgment there. Cam Newton was terrible in the preseason, and went on to
preseason
have a
doesn't
great
really
season.
matter, but it's all we have to go off of.
From my perspective, my belief with this team is that You've given Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry all the rope in the world, while at the same time holding on to those reins. It's like you're going to keep letting them run, but you're just going to keep them within arm's distance of you at the same time. And if this organization, if this was a new head coach and a new GM coming in, and this was the setup they have, here's what I believe they do. They go, right, Shedeur Sanders has got the highest ceiling and the highest upside of any of the guys on our roster. Run him out there, play him, see what he does. If he's horrible, we draft a quarterback in a much better quarterback draft next year. If he's good, then we've actually discovered something. Dylan Gabriel's not that guy. And guess what? 47-year-old Joe Flacco isn't that guy either. And it just all keeps coming down to the Browns being a complete and utter mess. As much as Shedeur and his whole cult of personality brings it upon himself, this wouldn't be happening somewhere other than the Cleveland Browns.
I agree with you, and ultimately, I do, as much as I could say, hey, Shedeur, you should have played better in the preseason, your last game was horrible, you're a fifth-round pick, on and on. It is not his, he didn't choose to go to the Browns. He was drafted by the Browns. That's a problem that the NFL has, and they're never going to fix that. You would have to have a strike for years. What likely happens? Joe Flacco is okay. Joe Flacco gets hurt. Joe Flacco gets benched at some point. They want to see what Shedeur Sanders can do. I've gotten this from multiple people. You want to see what Dylan Gabriel can do. So this year, it's very likely that Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, nobody knows what they're going to do with Deshaun Watson, and they could still win, 3 or 4 games and draft a quarterback in the Arch Manning draft next year in the top 5. How likely is it that Shedeur Sanders becomes a franchise quarterback for the Cleveland Browns and lasts there for 10 years?
It's a lot less likely than if they actually let him have an opportunity, but I don't think it's a conspiracy. I just think
But
it's
if they wanted to let him have an opportunity, you don't draft Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round. That's been the problem from day one, man.
My hot prediction is that Shedeur Sanders is starting by week 5 here in London against the Minnesota Vikings.
Circled in red pen on my personal calendar for months.
I'm watching Shedeur Sanders preseason because come week 5, I think I'm going to be calling play-by-play on Shedeur Sanders starting a game. So I'm watching.
And he is electric. I mean,
close.
Shedeur, he has it. He's Deion Sanders' son, for crying out loud. That is a definition of swagger. But in the NFL, I did this for 2 decades. It is the most cutthroat business, and in the end, it only comes down to one thing, Will. It comes down to talent. If he is good enough, they will see that. It's not going to matter about preseason. Preseason is absolutely meaningless. It will matter during workouts during the week and during practice, and it will become so obvious that the locker room buys into him, the coaches buy into him. Even if the owner doesn't, they'll have no choice but to put Shedeur Sanders on the field, and the only way that happens is if he is good enough.
Let's talk about a team who I think are buying into a rookie quarterback. And no, not Cam Ward, who none of us have talked about, despite being the number 1 overall pick and actually looking pretty good in preseason. He's starting to get a little bit tasty with some of the takes on him. I want to talk about the New York Giants. And I want to talk about Brian Daboll and the way that in every press conference when he brings Jaxson Dart up, a little glint comes across his eye, a little show of a smirk, like he's enjoying himself for the first time since he had to realise that he was going to have to start Daniel Jones for 17 games a season when he first arrived there. And look, there is a situation developing in New York where, ironically, Russell Wilson, who once did this to Matt Hasselbeck when they were in Seattle, is proving that he is never going to raise his game back to that level it's going to be. He might be a starter week 1 and he might deliver you some half-decent performances, but realistically, you want to be a team that sees what you have in this rookie quarterback. And increasingly, Brian Daboll is talking about him in glowing terms. And from my perspective, what I found really interesting was from the last preseason game when Jaxson Dart is feeding W's to Jameis Winston on the sideline. The 3 of them are doing...
The 3 amigos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I loved it.
The 2 of them and Tommy doing
Tommy DeVito!
Yeah, exactly. Who is, as much of a joke figure as the NFL can produce, are all on the field together, doing social media videos, talking about being the 3 amigos, all of this stuff. And meanwhile, Russell Wilson's turning up at WWE SummerSlam and getting booed out of the building in MetLife Stadium.
The New York Giants, who were just as bad as the Cleveland Browns last year, the New York Giants, their quarterback room at the moment is the literal exact opposite of the Cleveland Browns quarterback room. What does that come down to? And it's not like the Giants have the greatest front office in the world or the greatest team culture. That comes down to your head coach, your expectations, how you drafted. It's very, very simple. You draft your franchise quarterback in the 1st round 99% of the time in the modern day. Jaxson Dart You know, they wanted him. They went to get him. They handled it well initially. I spoke with Brandon Love, who does a lot of stuff with the New York Post and is around the Giants. We had this story exclusively at talkSPORT and on Twitter at talkSPORT _USA, talkSPORT.com, Will. He was saying that the Giants initially, Russell Wilson is a guy. Russell Wilson is a guy. There's no competition. And then what happens naturally? You watch the preseason games. Jaxson Dart is confident. He's smooth. He has swagger. He also plays really well. He's not turning the ball over. He continues to impress the Giants. And so naturally, he starts to become that guy. I won't be surprised at all if Jaxson Dart is starting in week 3 or week 4 and it's set up that way. I don't see any way, Will, that the Russell Wilson at this point in his career takes the Giants to that next big step, because that next big step is 10 wins, 11 wins. He's got 1 year to do it. He's really got 5 or 6 games to do it. It's not happening, man.
He's got 5 or 6 games to do it. He's got 5 or 6 games where the New York Giants start the season playing the Commanders, Cowboys, Chiefs, Chargers, who I know we're a bit down on, and Eagles in 5 of their first 6 games. On the road to the Saints is the easiest game in theory on their docket, and that's never actually an easy place
New Orleans
to go
is never
play.
easy, yeah, as we know.
And look, the offensive line, it sounds like Andrew Thomas is going to be back for the start of the season. It's been rejigged. Is that a positive? I really think like this is set up for Jaxson Dart, maybe not week 3, but by week 5, week 6, he's going to come in. They're going to be this 1-5 team. He's going to be the savior. He's going to carry them to around a 6 or 7 week win record. And New York is going to found their new hero. And I don't mean their new hero like Tommy DeVito, where it's funny because his mum cooks ziti and he talks in a great accent and his agent wears fedoras on the sidelines. I mean, actually a guy who maybe could be a franchise starting quarterback.
Look at how Brian Daboll has handled him. He joked that he put him out for the coin toss because he wanted to see how he responded to that. You know, you put out there your captain. You know, he calls him back onto the field. I love this. I do not remember a head coach doing this with any quarterback. Brian Daboll having fun in the preseason when you should have a little fun. Actually, it's not life or death. It's the NFL preseason. It does not matter. Big picture. And he calls Jaxson Dart for 1 play, Will. I just want to pull him off the bench, get him in for 1 play, take him back off the field, see how he responds. Of course, he responded well. He oozes confidence. I mean, at Ole Miss, he was wearing the crazy eye black, looking more like a baseball player than an NFL player. You put him in New York, and I love that Jaxson Dart, very professional. In his comments post-game after they blow out New England and you have the 3 amigos, he's asked about Russell Wilson. He's asked about becoming the starter. And he's like, this is Russ's job. I mean, that's what you want to say, right? You don't have Dylan Gabriel throwing Shedeur Sanders under the bus and showing you that they have dysfunction, of course, in Cleveland. He's handling like a pro, and when it's his time, it'll be his time.
And don't get me wrong, there are weaknesses there. Russell Wilson probably, if he plays all 17 games this season, wins more games than Jaxson Dart does. Maybe only by a game or 2, but he probably brings you a slightly better record. But you don't see the development. And yes, the obvious issues with Jaxson Dart, not great under pressure, particularly up middle, which is where their line isn't so strong. They are going to have to be quite grip it and rip it, see it, throw it, get the ball out quickly.
He'll try to squeeze it. He's going to get picked off. I mean, he'll try to squeeze in throws.
100%. All of that is true. But that's why I want to see him start. That's why I want to see him develop. It's why I want Jameis Winston to be his backup and rah-rah on the sideline.
They are going nowhere. They are going nowhere with Russell Wilson. The season is already over with Russell Wilson. It's only a matter of time until Jaxson Dart takes over. And the only question is, when does that happen? Because Brian Daboll, who should have lost his job last year, Joe and Schoen, as GM, should have lost their jobs. They've got 1 shot, Will. And you know how you keep your job in New York City? That you find your rookie quarterback, your franchise quarterback, and all of a sudden, if you win 6 or 7 games, you have hope. If you win 6 games with Russell Wilson, it's over. You're getting fired. Yeah. If you win 6 games with Jaxson Dart in New York City, you have hope, and you're sticking around for another year.
Before we move on to the Dallas Cowboys, greatest coin toss story of all time, just to throw it in there, has to be Jeff Fisher sending out every player that they picked from the RG3 trade after. That's still the all-time great for me. And I think I want to see more head coaches having fun. Obviously, Jeff Fisher does something, trolls him like that, finishes 8-8, gets fired 2 years later. But more fun. Have you watched? The NFL is the no fun league. Let's have some more fun.
Speaking
of
fun, have you been watching? And I have no idea. I don't know what you're going to say because we're going to do this unscripted. Have you watched the Cowboys documentary yet on Netflix?
I've not yet. No.
And you call yourself an NFL fan?
No, I call myself an NFL fan because
I know you're busy. I know you got a lot going on.
Because I haven't watched it. That's how I know I'm an NFL fan.
So my wife was out of town. She does some international traveling. She got back. I held off because I mean. wife goes out of town. There's an 8-part documentary on the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones and the Gambler, done by the crew that does what's all this stuff with Tim Tebow and Malice at the Palace. Really good production crew. That they put that together. Comes out, a lot of fanfare. It's completely all access. I mean, you're following Jerry Jones in his helicopter. I had high expectations, and I'd seen some good stuff. I'd seen, Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk, various NFL media types, bigger names, saying, hey, I started watching and I couldn't stop. I held off. I think it came out on like the 19th, and I held off till my wife came back. We're already through 4 episodes. Watched it last night, or watching like 1 episode a night. It gets better and better. And the stuff that is in there that I had forgotten about with Tom Landry and Jimmy Johnson and the stories that from that era. Jimmy Johnson, I'm going to give you a little spoiler. He didn't feed the Cowboys on the plane ride home because they lost a pretty meaningless regular season game. If you did that now, it would be all over social media. You would have people petitioning for the head coach to get fired because he was starving his team. Absolute must watch. I know we might not get into much Cowboys talk today, but that I don't care about the NFL preseason. That Netflix Dallas Cowboys show is an absolute must watch.
And look, if you were to rank the ownership in the NFL, and if we were to do this 30 years ago, Jerry Jones would be very high on that list. I now think in an era where we have Jimmy and Dee Haslam messing up the Browns like they are right now. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit of Bengals, Mike Brown, what he's doing there, Michael Bidwill at the Cardinals, like so many toxic situations.
Raiders
in
have
the
some
NFL.
Ownership issues. Even with Tom Brady, Raiders have some ownership issues.
The combination of Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones, yet again, proving themselves to be completely incapable in 2025 of running a modern NFL franchise, of trying to do things in this super old school way, which is just not going to deliver you championships anymore. And don't get me wrong, I still think overnight people are going to praise the Bengals for getting the Hendrickson deal done, and they're going to praise the Commanders for getting the McLaurin deal done. Yes, it's good those deals got done. It's way too late.
It's way too late.
But for Micah Parsons, who you could have signed 2 off seasons ago, who could be being paid less than Nick Bosa, who could be being paid less than Myles Garrett, who could be being paid less than Trey Hendrickson, is going to have a contract bigger than all of them, is currently not training with the team despite probably being the best defensive player in the NFL. And it again comes down to organizational shenanigans from a pair of men who believe that they know how to do things and everyone else is wrong, and they've just left themselves in this glaring hole, which means that yet again the Cowboys won't be successful this season.
So that's the reason I brought up the Cowboys documentary on Netflix. Number one, the main reason to watch it is because it gives you this perspective of Jerry Jones and his life and taking over the Cowboys and Tom Landry and Jimmy Johnson. The biggest takeaway from all of it, and I haven't even finished it, but I've seen this from other people, and it's painfully clear because writing in Houston for more than a decade, being around the Cowboys, I've written a lot of Jerry Jones columns. The Jerry Jones from when he bought the Cowboys, they win their Super Bowls, Jimmy Johnson, to the Jerry Jones now, 30 years later, it's pathetic. I mean, it's sad, it's pathetic. But I have no sympathy.
No.
Because not
Trust
only
me.
is he a gazillionaire.
Nobody in this room is crying into their silk sheets about
He is the definition of his own worst enemy. He is so he's not even hard-headed. He is so overly proud and self-obsessed, and he's operating still almost like in this 1950s, used car salesman way. The fact that nobody can tell him is, Steven and his family and the PR staff there, and the fact that nobody can tell him, like, man, this didn't work in 2000, this doesn't work in 2025. And ultimately, Will, he knows more than anyone, it's all about winning a championship in Dallas. It's all about the next Super Bowl. And we are closer than ever to Jerry Jones going to his grave and never winning another Super Bowl. And the reason will not be because the Dallas Cowboys weren't good enough. They didn't have enough talent. They didn't have a franchise quarterback. They didn't have a great edge rusher. It'll be because Jerry Jones became the worst owner, not in the NFL, in all of pro sports. And I'm not talking about pro sports in America. I'm talking about international pro sports. Jerry Jones right now he has more power, more money, more sway, he has the trophies, and he is so lost in the woods. Like, there's these scenes of him hunting in this deer stand, rifle stand, and he's up there shooting as like an 80-year-old guy. Looks, again, pathetic. Jerry Jones is lost in the woods. Like, he is so far up his own bleep that nobody will ever get him again. The fact that he thinks he can do a handshake deal with Micah Parsons in some back room and not bring in David Mulligetta, who was Deshaun Watson's agent, who's one of the most powerful agents in the NFL.
I would say
is so absurd. Is so absurd that I have no sympathy. And the Cowboys, but here's the thing: he won't fire himself. He won't delegate power. It's never going to get fixed there until Jerry Jones goes away.
I look at the teams that we're kind of if I talk about them as a blanket, and I want to talk more about the Cowboys, but between the situation with Micah Parsons at the Cowboys, between what the Bengals are doing and considering the amount of talent that they have, and considering the Commanders have left what they've left so late and the weird offseason they've had, I won't be stunned if none of these teams are in the playoffs come January. And they are three of, arguably, the most talented teams.
That's a good point.
Like, they could have 3 of the top 7, 8 quarterbacks in the NFL. Dak Prescott was a legitimate MVP candidate 2 years ago. Now he's got a legitimate downfield threat in George Pickens on the outside, a line which looks like it's been reorganized. They're a team who generally have continued to draft well despite all the nonsense going on behind the scenes, despite the inflated egos of the Joneses costing them year after year. But they have defensive injuries to key players like Marshawn Overshawn, like Trayvon Diggs, who wasn't great last year anyway. You add on top of that, not having the best defensive player in the NFL, probably, even training with you. Like, you just think, oh, we'll get a deal done in the next week and he'll turn up week 1 and he'll be absolutely gangbusters.
It never works. It didn't work in the 80s. It doesn't work in the 90s. It never works anymore. If you are not with your team in camp and you just magically show up for week 1, by the time that you're at your athletic prime in the current moment, it takes you week 4. And guess what always happens? They always get injured. Because like this is out of whack, or they're overcompensating here and they tweak something here. It never works out, Will.
Yeah, I don't think the Cowboys are making the playoffs, regardless of what happens here.
We did the predictions last week. They're not making the playoffs.
And this is with, there are little murmurings coming through that people are starting to really get behind Brian Schottenheimer and think this offense is going to be really good. And like, it's very much kind of behind the scenes whispers. The hipsters are starting to get a little bit excited.
Their defense is absolutely horrible, and they're missing their best defensive player. They were one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year, and they've answered it by not having Micah Parsons be with the team. And he's on a trainer's bench, not in uniform, eating nachos, chatting with Falcons fans.
They are sat in an NFC which has a very inflated middle. 1 or 2 teams at the top and 10 teams who could finish in seeds 3
which is
through
what we
7.
said all last week on the program, yeah.
And it wouldn't take a lot to elevate them. Get this deal done at the beginning of the season, actually make a few more moves, and they could easily be the 3rd best team in the NFC, and they just refuse to do it because their ownership is a clown show. I know I've called people a clown show twice today, but you know what? That's what it is. We need to ring the circus music. We need to bring out the clowns. It's an utter shambles. Just to kind of mention the thoughts on those other teams, because Trey Hendrickson gets his deal done overnight in the last 24 hours. He gets his inflated pay that he wanted. He's not paying on the $16 million that he said he would never do.
1 year deal, right? He can be a free agent next year,
which I think is probably what he needs to do. I think it's the right deal for him and team because of his age. I know he was the sack leader last year, so I don't actually have an issue with the deal itself. But yet again, this team believe that their entire problem was Lou Anarumo, and Al Golden's going to come in and fix everything. They have this pass rusher who is one of the best in the NFL, even if he's aging, and you've let him just sit there festering, not working with, guess what, your brilliant potential rookie pass rusher who really could have done with that little bit of mentoring. And I just think the defensive side of the ball is going to cost them again, and they're going to be another 8-9, 9-8 type season, and I fully wouldn't be surprised if they missed out on the playoffs at all again.
I mean, the problem with the Bengals is the same thing as the Cowboys. They play and we did this last week on our prediction show on talkSPORT and at talkSPORT.com. They play in a really tough division. They play in a really tough, unforgiving, unflinching division where you have Lamar Jackson and you have Aaron Rodgers and you have Joe Burrow and you have some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in your division. Now Aaron Rodgers is down. We all know that. Joe Burrow is amazing. The Bengals are not that different than the Cowboys. The Bengals defense is horrible. The Bengals kept out their star. They refused to pay him. I'm sorry, I disagree with you. I don't think that's a good deal for Trey Hendrickson. All Trey Hendrickson did was get a little more money. It's all about your guaranteed money, which is what he wanted. What happens if Trey Hendrickson gets hurt in week 4? Trey Hendrickson's career could be over, and he has nothing guaranteed after that. I don't think that was smart by him or his agent or the Bengals.
I think being a premium pass rusher, unless it's
but if he has a down year and he's plus 30.
For me, unless it's a career-threatening injury, like a real career-ender, broken knee, absolute mess. If it's a torn ACL, for example, and it happens in week 4, he'll get all his guaranteed money from the Bengals, and somebody next year will pay him $30 million a year on a 3 or 4 year contract. He'll get massive money because people are desperate for that kind of player.
Yeah.
So I don't mind him betting on himself. You're right, it's probably not a good deal, but I don't think it's a terrible deal. I just think it's for a terrible team. And then Washington. I said it on the prediction show last week. I don't think they're making the playoffs.
I have Washington making the playoffs.
The more I've looked into this, the more I am like, this is purely...
Dr. Will doing the inspection.
Yeah, absolutely. Deep diving. This is purely... Can Jaden Daniels strap a bunch of 30-something past-it players onto his back and carry them into the promised land of January? Because, genuinely, I took a real... proper deep look at this team this week, right? They're relying on a rookie 7th round pick at running back because Austin Eckler isn't it anymore. They're relying on Terry McLaurin having no preseason, coming in and being their only
which I agree with you. I don't
receiver.
like. Yeah.
And okay, Debo's looked better in preseason now, and they've worked in a few gadget
He's
things.
a little as you know, Debo Samuel's a little fragile.
But I'm not willing to quite believe that Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator, has turned his whole career around in one season.
He was pretty good last year.
And I am worried that people are going to see Jaden Daniels this year, their best offensive lineman in Sam Cosmi down. They've made this big Laramie Tunsil trade, but he is a walking penalty.
He is.
The defensive side of the ball, they're relying on Javon Kinlaw and Von Miller to come in and make all of their pass rush happen, which isn't like...
They're well coached.
They got older. They spent this offseason...
Only the Eagles are getting on the NFC East for you this year.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Genuinely, they got older in a way that a team who believe, right, we are one move away from making the Super Bowl. We just need to, if the Bills go and sign an aging pass rusher, like they did with Joey Bosa, you go, that makes sense to me. They're an AFC Championship level team. They think, right, if we can get some juice out of this guy, just squeeze the last thing out of him, maybe that gets us over the top. The Commanders have done that with 6 different players. Even if 3 of them hit, I think they're a worse team than they were last year. I don't have them going
if Jaden Daniels is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, which clearly he was last year. Now, we saw with C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud had the fantastic rookie year and then took a total step backward in year 2. And what did the Texans do? They rightfully got rid of their offensive coordinator and made a bunch of changes. I don't feel like the Commanders this year are the Texans last year. Jaden Daniels, I do not see taking a step backward. He was absolutely fantastic. I don't think that they've lost a bunch of offensive talent. They're well coached, good disciplined team. Dan Quinn did a really nice job there. He's not like a wild crazy man.
Yeah, the coaching is a thing. I don't think they're
I don't have them winning 14 games, and I don't have them in the Super Bowl. But can they win? Can they go 9-8, 10-7, and make the playoffs? Yeah, no, it's a step backward. I think they'll take a step back. I think Jaden Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury, Dan Quinn. There's enough talent there. They're still going to be hungry because they got blown out of their playoff game against the Eagles. I have them making the playoffs, but I know what you're saying. They're going to go a little backward.
Jaden Daniels had the best rookie season I've ever seen.
His efficiency was absolutely insane.
I just think that if that rolls back 10%, he can't carry them single-handedly. And it didn't take 10% from CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud will have been disappointed with his own performance last year, but still look like a good quarterback in a very messy offense. I just think Jaden Daniels has not been put in a position to succeed, unfortunately. I don't want it to happen. I really don't want it to happen. I really want Jaden Daniels to be fantastic again this year because he's a joy to watch. He makes the NFC East more interesting. Yeah. I'm not a huge Eagles or Cowboys fan, so I wouldn't mind seeing them run through like a truck. Commanders to win the NFC East is what I would love to happen with my heart. I just look at the moves they've made with my head and go, Adam Peters, I think you've made a mess of this.
The best part is that we're finally like 10 days away from...
Give me the football.
I was never a fan of the preseason in the media, covering it for 2 decades. I like it less than ever. It's a necessity. What they have to do is get down to 2 preseason games and 18 regular season games. We're going to get into this at talkSPORT.com. That's where it's going. I actually like the joint practices. I've covered a ton of those. Coaches will tell you get way more out of that with a joint scheduled practice for 3 days, although you end up with a bunch of fights and maybe some more injuries. But having the 3 it's too long. It's too meaningless. We all end up talking about a bunch of stuff that doesn't really matter. We convince ourselves this is going to happen. let's just get into the regular season.
And guess what?
And we're almost there.
We kick off the regular season with the Super Bowl champions going up against Jerry Jones, Sam Bollock, Dallas Cowboys, live on talkSPORT.
And what if Micah Parsons signs his contract? Like Dak Prescott last year signed his deal basically the day of the regular season starting. Imagine Micah Parsons comes back. The NFL is set up so well for the start of this season I love the season kickoff, the game in Brazil. We're gonna have a ton of stuff all over the radio, right?
Listen to this slate for week 1 of the season. We have 6 live games. We kick off with the Dallas Cowboys against the Philadelphia Eagles. In Philly, they get their biggest rivals while they raise the banner for their latest Super Bowl title. They laugh in the face of the Dallas Cowboys.
Jason Kelce will surely take over the field.
Taking his shirt off, jumping out of boxes, all of that. We then go to Brazil, where we get to watch Patrick Mahomes for the first time in this new look offense, going up against a Chargers team who I think people were a lot more optimistic about a few months ago, but still a sexy divisional game. Then 6 o'clock on the Sunday, Aaron Rodgers goes to MetLife Stadium.
That's a heck of a
where
game.
He ruptured his Achilles in his first ever game.
He's going to get sacked 6 times.
Where he could be absolutely decimated with that Pittsburgh Steelers team. We then roll into 49ers Seahawks, huge NFC West rivalry, 2 teams I think people are very intrigued by. And then the primetime games on Sunday and Monday. On Sunday Night Football, week 1, they are giving us the Baltimore Ravens in Buffalo to face the Bills.
That's a fantastic game.
That might be the AFC Championship game.
I mean, that's your MVP debate all over again. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen,
And then on Monday Night Football, we get Bears-Vikings, new look Bears, Ben Johnson. What can Caleb be in year 2? The Vikings coming off the back of that hot season, but now Sam Darnold's gone and JJ McCarthy's in there.
This is another thing the NFL does. The NFL does so well because they control their scheduling, right? Like I've really enjoyed the return of Premier League this year. The Liverpool-Newcastle last night was fantastic. Great start to the Premier League season, but I still think like they could, and they don't need to juice it because the stadiums are sold out and the TV's fine. They're making their money. But the NFL does better than anybody. They understand the power of scheduling, and they start hot, and then they go into the division, and then you go into the rivalries on and on. The NFL schedules better. It's one of their many, many secrets, better than anyone else in the world from a pro sports league, and they're not afraid. Like, they would go Manchester City, Manchester United, game 1. They're not afraid to do it.
And don't get me wrong, it's the longest off-season in football. And if every game you gave me in week 1 was the quality of Colts, Dolphins, or Jags, Panthers, I'd still
be into it.
Lap up every single moment
but it wouldn't be the same.
Because football's back after 8 months off. But you talk about that Liverpool-Newcastle game. You talk about Man United-Man City. They're delivering us a game of that quality in every single window. And even in the worst game window, the 6 p.m. on Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, wherever you're watching us or listening to us, they're still giving us an absolute banger in that Jets.
And it's the thing
game.
for me.
I'm all over it.
Like I always said, it's like I'm more into the Premier League than ever. I mean, I'm obsessed. But this is what happens. This is what happened to me the last 2 years here. Like, I'm more into it than ever. So if it's a 0 to 100 scale, I'm at 102 right now. But this is going to be the problem, Will. I have a real job. I cover the NFL as a senior writer for talkSPORT. The NFL is going to come back, and I can't do. I'm married. I have a dog. I can't do it all. Premier League, it falls back. It's just like I'm really into F1, but by the time you have Premier League rolling and then the NFL takes over, F1 just goes away because the NFL just takes over, man. The games are so damn good. There's so much going on. There's so much to get into, and all of a sudden, Brighton versus Everton doesn't mean that much anymore.
You said last week about how you don't do fantasy sports because there's not enough time for it in your life.
I don't have 80 hours.
I do fantasy NFL and I love it. But every year at talkSPORT, I get invited to 15 fantasy Premier League teams, and every year I go, I'll do it. But when September starts, I'm not going to change my team for 5 months. Yeah. And then after the Super Bowl, I'm going to look and go, I'm bottom. Well, there's no point now, is there? And I just, look, it's going to be brilliant. I absolutely can't wait for it back. What's amazing is I looked at the schedule in front of me, and those are our games that we're carrying. You've also got Rams-Texans, which is brilliant. Packers-Lions, which is brilliant. Yeah. Cam Ward starts his NFL career by having to go to Mile High and face maybe the best defense in football. Like, that 9 o'clock window on its own has 4 games, all of which could be the primetime game for that week. And then they give us Bills-Ravens. I'm sorry, the NFL is unmatched, unbeaten, undefeated, the best league in the world.
I think week 2 is it's a Super Bowl matchup. I think week 2 is Chiefs-Eagles.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, what are you doing to us? Like, how are we going to handle that? Brilliant, Brian. Really good fun as always. Check out the YouTube page, talkSPORT USA. It's the same on Facebook. It's the same on X.
We got everything linked up, so it's all talkSPORT USA anymore over all of our social channels. Follow everything. Where are you on
It's
Twitter?
probably the same on more modern social channels as well, like Instagram and TikTok and stuff. Really showing our age by going on about Facebook. I'm at Will Gav. He's at
BT Smith UK, and everything at talksport.com. We have expanded coverage. Really covered the NFL better than anyone else in the UK, and we're not that far. I'm not that far away from going to Dublin for Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. We have the Tottenham games, the Wembley games. I was just sitting down last week with the president of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I got a big piece coming up at talksport.com about the 18th game and NFL expansion that I'm working on right now, with a bunch of exclusive interviews. There's so much going on right now for talkSPORT NFL coverage. Will.
And yet, this week, the teams are rolling out the red carpet for us. We'll be speaking to Jermaine Johnson of the Jets. I think we're getting Trent Williams from the 49ers.
Nice.
We should be getting. Certainly, that was what was touted to me.
Who had his own contract deal last year. And you know.
Well, the last time the 49ers will ever do that, I think, after Ayuk and Trent Williams in the same offseason was a total mess. Look, it's going to be brilliant. We're banging on at the end of the show just about how brilliant we are, so we should probably wrap it up.
Let's do it, man.
Top stuff, Brian. Thank you very much for listening, watching, whatever you're doing. talkSPORT USA. Subscribe, like, ring that little bell.